Chris Lee and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to preview games of Tuesday, February the 15th. And Blake, let's start with an explanation. We are doing this for the second time today, but there's a reason for that.
Yeah, there is. It's not just technical issues, which seems to be the case most of the time.
Usually
we
the
do
issue.
something twice. But so I called Chris and told him, hey, I didn't do a really good job of explaining something on the previous one. And for full disclosure, you and I were kind of rushing. We both had something we had to do, and we were like, all right, we gotta try to get this. We try not to do that, but it's just one of those. It's gonna happen every now and then. And so I said, wait a minute, I don't think I explained the whole Ty Washington thing in terms of, look, if he doesn't play, that's completely different. And so about probably 15, 20 minutes after we put this up, which a lot of you guys jump on this pretty quickly, which, hey, we appreciate. I realized, wait a second, we probably should have explained it a little bit better. So we're redoing this, and just for reference, we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to Kentucky and Tennessee here in a second. But if you're wondering, wait a second, these guys just did this video, why is it different? That's why. So
sometimes we just goof. But anyway,
we're our own George Costanza sometimes.
We are our own George Costanzas, the master of our own domains.
Yeah.
Or sometimes not so much the master.
But hey,
anyway,
at least I get to talk about Ole Miss, South Carolina again for the second time.
Well, who wouldn't tune in for that?
I get to change my pick on this one, right? So
sure.
The ultimate fence sitter, doing multiple videos, giving you different picks for each one.
Right. Well, let's start in order of tip-off. South Carolina goes into Ole Miss. Some might say invades, but we won't go there. Where the Rebels are about 3-point favorites according to KenPom.
And the after dark edition of this, like this.
This is off to a bad start.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's fine. Like we're just telling you, like our first one is always usually the best. This second one is never great. So
yeah,
congratulations, everyone.
Adjust your expectations accordingly. Well, I wouldn't. In all seriousness, I wouldn't touch this game. I have no idea what's going to happen. My gut is who can take care of the ball wins. South Carolina is tremendous at forcing turnovers and awful at holding on to the ball. Ole Miss will be without Deshaun Ruffin, which is no new news. Jarkel Joyner is back and playing well. But these two teams, it's just been an adventure any given night. I mean, I guess you lean with the home team, and that is Ole Miss, but I don't think either of us have any confidence in what is going to happen on Tuesday night in Oxford.
That's why I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I will take Ole Miss because they're the home team. If South Carolina was the home team, I would take South Carolina. So that tells you about what I think of kind of what you can expect from these two teams. Neither's been very consistent. I think South Carolina's actually played better as of late. I think you can say the same for Ole Miss. If you look at some of their recent games, they lost at Missouri by 6, Florida in overtime, beat LSU on the road, beat Kansas State, played well at times against Arkansas, beat Florida at home. So Ole Miss has played pretty well over the past couple of weeks. South Carolina, I don't know. I mean, I think it's just one of those teams that just depends on what you get. But I also know that South Carolina has beaten Vanderbilt twice and Georgia twice, and that's 4 of their 5 SEC wins. So maybe they start doing this to Ole Miss now, where it's just one of those teams near the bottom and it's a good position. But I have no idea what to expect in this game. I wouldn't bet on it for anything but these two teams right now, and I'm going to pick Ole Miss to win at home.
At the same time, which is 6 Central, Florida goes to Texas A&M. A&M a 1-point favorite on KenPom. Again, we don't have lines as we're doing this. Another one that's hard to figure, Colin Castleton is back for the Gators, but Tyree Appleby may be out.
Yeah.
So he's played really well. That would change the complexion of the game, although look at Florida to go and win without him there wouldn't shock me, given that A&M has lost 8 in a row.
Yeah, I mean, without Tyree Appleby, I think things get very interesting because A&M is still one of those teams that will turn you over, and we've talked about that a lot. That's still something they have going for them. And quite frankly, maybe in some of these games that, they've been right there, it's because they've been able to force mistakes. They forced 22 turnovers against LSU. Even in that game against Missouri turns it over 13 times. Going back to some of the others I'm looking at here, Tennessee turned it over 17 times against A&M. Like, if you just keep going back to some of these games, that's still something, even when they're losing, they're still able to do that. So that's my concern with Florida is if Appleby doesn't play, I think that becomes a big issue perhaps in this game, because that's just someone else that one of your better players that may not be on the floor in the backcourt, and that can change some things. So I think that is a big thing to watch in this one. Man, I think this is another one just like the previous one we talked about. I would want no part of this game in terms of expectations because you have a team that's lost 8 straight. They got to win one somewhere. I just don't think A&M's going to lose out the rest of the year. So this to me feels like a pretty good spot to do that. Yet I'm still going to pick Florida because I think this is it's either a must win or a cannot lose. Like, take your pick. Like, I think that Florida just can't afford to lose this one right now. They're right there on the NCAA tournament bubble. You lose this one, you start to move into that next 4 out category instead of the last 4 out. And then you got to make up some ground somewhere against either, Auburn, Arkansas, Kentucky. Got to win some of those games. Although, what's the common denominator between those 3? They're all in Gainesville. So, still, I don't think Florida needs to lose a game like this. They need to find a way to win it. And I tend to think they will, but I think the setup is very similar to the Florida game against Missouri a couple weeks ago on the road. I think it will be a one-possession game, maybe the entire way. I just think it's that kind of game between these two, but I'll pick Florida, but I'm not very confident about it.
I was doing a quick check on this Appleby situation. It's a thigh bruise, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's an old injury that he re-aggravated. And, of course, if it's a bad enough bruise, that can be very painful to play through. So in case people are wondering what the situation is, that's it. And I don't have anything updated beyond that. I don't think they have said definitively, whether he will play or not. So if you wondered, that's what we've got as we do this.
Speaking of which, that's a good segue into the next game because this is
Yes,
where college and pro is really different, right? Like we feel like we would know exactly the case on someone, but like that's what makes this so hard because we usually don't know up until game time sometimes on whether some of these guys are going to play. So that makes it really hard to kind of
and the situation is Ty Washington's leg injury. And as we're doing this, we don't know the status, which is why we pulled the other one. We just didn't feel like we had gone enough into that. Let's do it this way. Let's suppose he plays at full strength or something close to that, and then we'll do a part B of what might that look like if he doesn't. Well, first of all, Kentucky is a 1-point favorite on KenPom. Of course, the Wildcats just obliterated Tennessee the first time these two teams played. Tennessee has since played considerably better. Kentucky's played better, too. Kentucky just gets better every week. But the Vols have found something with Josiah Jordan-James being a consistent scorer. Zakai Ziegler has increasingly played well. Kennedy Chandler, of course, a very good player. Santiago Vescovi has been their best player, and I think benefited by those other guards stepping up. So let's acknowledge what happened the first time, but let's also say Tennessee has improved in tangible ways, and then we've got the Washington factor that we'll get to in a second. But first, if he plays, what does this look like?
Yeah, so this allows me to say exactly what I said last time, assuming that he plays, and that is he was a huge factor, 28 points, and we talked about it. The chances of Kentucky scoring 107 on Tennessee on the road, not very high. I don't think it's going to happen again. It was sort of the perfect storm. Kentucky shot 71% from 2, 61% from 3, 95% from the free throw line. Tennessee turned it over 20 times, just could not do anything to stop this team. And Ty Washington was a big reason why. But we also pointed out it wasn't just him. There were a lot of other guys. Severe Wheeler played well. Grady played well. Sheboy only had 9 points, but yet his presence were still there on the floor in terms of the way he affects the game. So that was the first time around. And I think if you assume, which I realize if you're a Kentucky fan, anyone really that watched how that game ended against Florida, you see him go out the way he did, not come back. This is why, again, we're redoing this. We did not go into this enough last time. You're probably more pessimistic than optimistic that he's going to be available. But
let's say that's not the first time he's gone down with the leg injury this year. So.
Right, and that's the thing is, when you look at it that way, I think assuming that he's at full strength is probably the biggest long shot of this entire scenario, and that's why. In that scenario, I would pick Kentucky. I think Kentucky, because of what he's still able to do, it's going to be a much tougher challenge this time because they're on the road I don't think they're going to shoot it as well as they did last time. If they do, congratulations. They're going to probably win by 20. But I just don't see that happening. I think Tennessee will be ready for a game like this in Knoxville. Place will be booming. And I think this will be a really good game. But if he plays, and let's say he plays, and let's go take the next step. He's not at full strength. Take your pick. If he plays 15 minutes, 20 minutes, how do we properly gauge what those 15 or 20 minutes are going to look like, right? And that makes it even tougher. So I think the best way to put it is if he plays, I'm taking Kentucky. And even if I don't know what strength he's at, I just think him being on the floor, if he's out there, if he's moving around okay, all right, I'm going to take Kentucky. If he does not play, I think.
Now, they still got Xavier Wheeler. They've still got as many parts as anybody in the league.
I think I'm still going to take Kentucky if he doesn't play. But I think that
is not what I thought you would say, by the way.
See, I know, and I didn't know if I was going to say that either. But I still think that this team is just – I don't know. I just think this team is still there's just something about them. They're a different team. Listen, I completely understand. They are a different team when he's not out there, and we've said this right before. We've talked about. But, man, I still find it hard to pick against this team. I don't know what it is. I still look at them and say, what's the one thing we keep talking about with Kentucky? Is all the different options, all the different guys that can step up at any time.
It's Brooks some nights. It is Grady some nights. It is Wheeler Wheeler, they can get nothing from Wheeler shooting and still win the games. Yeah. That's what they've done lately. He's been in an offensive funk.
Even Davion Mintz scoring 10 points is significant because
and he can do more than that.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what we talk. Like, I think he could step in here. He's not going to be the same player as Washington. He's not going to do the exact same things, but I still think he can step in here and make a difference. So look, we're saying all this to say this. It's so, without knowing Washington's status, I think it's impossible to gauge. I don't think it's as clear as saying if he plays, it's this way. If he doesn't play, it's this way. Because I think if he does play, it's like, okay, what percentage? Like, where is he at? We won't know that until the game is starting. Until we see him moving out there. I think it's impossible to know. And again, if he doesn't play, we do have that reference point of him not playing this year, right? Like, we have seen Kentucky without him playing. And what did we see? Mississippi State at home in overtime, right? That was a game that was, pretty interesting for a little while there, especially Mississippi State making a run.
Although Iverson Molinar went off in that game without him on the floor, and so maybe that's something there to ponder.
And what happened in that game? You had Wheeler with 15. I have to look it up here. Brooks with 12, Sheboy with 21, Grady with 18, right? So you still have four different guys that are hitting the 12-point mark, and that's what we say. It could be Brooks. It could be, Mintz only had 4, but it could be him. If he didn't, the Auburn game changed with Washington not out there. If anyone watched it, you realize that. Like, the game changed a bit when he wasn't out there. I'm not saying Auburn still wouldn't have won, but it was a different game, right? Like, anyone that watched that game with a neutral basketball opinion could have understood that the game did change when he wasn't out there. So, but that's really all we have, right? Like, we have basically those two games to go off of and say that's not, to me, enough of a background to just have a strong opinion one way or the other to say that if he does play, it's this. If he doesn't play, it's that. Because without knowing what the scenario is, I think it's really hard to make that pick. So
Kentucky's the call either way.
I think I'm going to pick Kentucky. I just think even without him, what have I talked about? I've talked about the depth. Like, that's been one of, to me, the most impressive part of Kentucky is just the other guys that are stepping up. Yes, it's impressive enough to see the guys that are the starters, but to me, it's the other guys that are stepping up is why they're as good as they are right now. So I think it may be a 1-point game. They may win by 1, but I think there's something about them that I like the way they're playing. I think that there is a scenario here where, I think Sheboy could play really well here, but also if he gets in foul trouble, I think we talked about that like in the previous video we did, was in that kind of scenario. That's where things get really interesting if Washington doesn't play. So I'll pick Kentucky. I can't say, here you go, fence sitter comment. Obviously we wouldn't be surprised if Tennessee won, right? Like, we can all say that. I don't think anyone would be shocked if Washington doesn't play and Tennessee wins. None of us are going to be shocked by that. But I have enough confidence in where Kentucky's at right now, and I think a big reason is because of the other guys around Washington. And I think that's why I'll still pick them here.
Okay, that one tips off 9 Eastern. Again, that one is in Knoxville. At the same time, 8 Central in Columbia, Missouri, the Tigers host Arkansas, which took its first loss in about a month. Arkansas is about a 6-point favorite, according to Ken Pomeroy. We have talked a lot about how Missouri is playing as close to its ceiling as any team in the league in recent weeks. Now, that's not a very high ceiling, but give the Tigers credit. That's been, well, I mean, you say it's not a high ceiling. It was darn near good enough to beat Auburn, which that night was more about Auburn than Missouri. I get it. But point is, Missouri can beat teams on a given night and beat just about anybody, which is not something we would have said a month ago. I do think, though, athletically, this is a bad matchup for Missouri, and let's not forget what happened the first time. Do you remember what that was like?
Yes, we did mention that in the first video. I think, without doing my record. Well, I think without doing my research, it is the only time this season we've seen a team lose by more than they scored in the SEC, and that was a 44-point loss at Arkansas where they scored 43. So, yes, the revenge factor as well. Like Tennessee has revenge factor against Kentucky. Missouri has the same here. But if you're looking at it from Missouri's standpoint, what they still do really well is, and I've said this about Conzo Martin, defensively they still do a really good job game planning. They understand what they need to do to slow the other team down. Maybe it's not executed perfectly every night, but they still do it very well. The issue is that they still can't score, and they just have a hard time scoring the ball consistently. And I think that's what's going to hurt them in this game, because to me, I said this afterwards, I think Arkansas is fine. Arkansas lost by 1 point on the road without playing well at all at Alabama, without J.D. Note on the floor for basically an entire half, and yet they still only lost by 1. They had a chance to win the game on the final couple possessions. I don't think that loss hurts Arkansas at all. It's a big win for Alabama, not a bad loss for Arkansas. So I think they're fine coming into this matchup. You know, we said this also in the other video. You're not. I don't think you can say that it's good for a team to lose. I don't think you're going to spin it that way necessarily. But once you do lose after a long winning streak, I think there is something to just sort of a reset and sort of that relief of not hearing about, hey, you've won this many in a row. What do you have to do to keep it to this number and get it to this number? Okay, now that's all out the window. You're just trying to win the next game now. And that's what they were doing before. But, you know, it's more of that, as we said, right? Arkansas was not going to win out the rest of the season. It just wasn't going to happen. But now that you've got this loss, all right, you're able to regroup. It's another interesting challenge on the road because Missouri has played so well at home. So I think there is a scenario here. Maybe Arkansas gets off to a slow start. Missouri gets off to a good start. They're building. You could see that play out that way. But I just think Arkansas is simply the better team. I love the way Jalen Williams has been playing. J.D. Note, you know, with him on the floor for 30 minutes is much different than him on the floor for 20, right? And yeah, I think that's where, in a game like this, if he gets in foul trouble again, okay, we have that discussion. But I just think Arkansas, this was, again, I don't think it was a good loss in terms of no loss you're going to say is a good loss. But now you're able to kind of reset some things. I think you still feel pretty good about yourself coming out of that game against Alabama. Knowing that you didn't play anywhere near your best, but you were right there with a chance to win. So I think they pick right back up where they left off. And even though Missouri has played better, I still think Arkansas wins this game. And quite frankly, I think there's a scenario where they win this by 10 plus. But if the number's 6 on Ken Pom, so if it's like 6 or 7, I think I would probably still take Arkansas. I think they're going to bounce back in a fine way. So
okay, we give all sides as we know it. And I'm just going to throw this out. I don't think it'll change your opinion, but just for the folks out there, let's go in reverse order of Missouri's home games. Beat Ole Miss by 6 this weekend. Before that, lost to Florida by a point, a game that was decided in the final seconds on a 2 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon in a snowstorm with nobody there. Right. The one before that, a 1-point loss to Auburn on the 25th of January.
That's right. We went through this in the last video. I forgot we did this. Yes.
Yeah. Keep going. Before that, a 3-point loss to Texas A&M. That probably was the last game A&M won. Before that, beating Alabama by 6 points. Again, these are the home games in reverse. Before that, beating Utah, which isn't that good this year. Won that one at home. Before that, beating Eastern Illinois at home. Before that, beating some guy named Paul Quinn. And if you're going to all the way back to the start of the season, beating Northern Illinois and Central Michigan for whatever that's worth, two awful MAC teams. But that's all Missouri's home games, and they're all either wins or close losses.
Yep. Oh, you're exactly right. And I think if you look at it that way, probably another close game, right? And listen, maybe that's it. I completely forgot. We started going through this in the previous video. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the trend we talked about the last time. I told you that way I can just flip it, right? Like I don't just flip my opinion on this stuff. So I it's not going to change my opinion on picking Arkansas, but maybe that does something you start to look at and say, okay, there's something here. They've played everyone close or beaten teams, so yeah, and I don't know, like it's a different hangover effect, but we talked about it. I remember we did discuss this. Maybe it's different this time for Arkansas. You come off the hangover of beating Auburn, the loss at Alabama. Maybe there's a slight there, but I'm gonna stick with Arkansas. I just didn't. I don't think a lot of people did necessarily, but I didn't come out of that Alabama game feeling any different about either team. And so
I didn't either.
And I think it's like, okay, if I don't feel any different about Arkansas, they had just won 9 in a row. And so now they play a team that they're better than, that they beat by 44 the last time. I don't, even with the trends, I think that's where you're looking at. If you're like, all right, this is my one game I'm betting on, I would probably look at that trend and certainly take a deep thought at that, knowing that Missouri has played everyone, 6 points or less or won for the most part since that UMKC game that they lost by 14 at home in the second game of the season. So that is worth noting.
That's true. That was a home loss. I skipped over that. Did not mean to.
That's the second game of the season.
I was just still wondering who Paul Quinn was at that point.
And
is it one guy or 5?
We got that video coming up soon. Who is Paul Quinn? That'll be our next one. But
can't wait for that.
That should be a good one. But it's interesting. But I think I have the confidence in Arkansas to pick them here. And if that number is 6 or 7, like I said, I think I'd still take Arkansas. But maybe I wouldn't go to the level of saying they win this by 15 or something. Maybe I don't want to go there just based on we've seen those weird ones, right, where a team beats someone by 40 the first time, then it turns around and just not completely flips, but you just have a much closer game. Or it's just a matchup problem, right? So we'll find out. So
it's the part where Blake sits the fence.
Well, I'm just saying, listen, that's what we do here.
In all seriousness, I say that as a joke. Our job is to tell you as much of what we think and why, and to hit all sides. And if you're not going over this enough to where you have some uncertainty, you're probably not doing your job.
This is the SEC, man. This is the most unpredictable league. And we say this all the time, but as the league gets better, it only gets more unpredictable.
Yes.
Because that is just the way it goes. The league has gotten better. There've been a couple ups and downs, but our job is to present the entire picture. And we're just, I'm sorry, we're not good at hot takes. We're not good at it.
If you were here for hot takes, we are not going to be your guys now or ever.
Only unless it pertains to comparing these programs to television characters.
Yes.
We're not good at
that.
Then
we're very hot take-ish, and we enjoy it.
So that's what we do. I know there's some people that just want us to say, look, tell me this team's going to win, and say, be the strong ESPN or personality, right? Just say, all right, this is going to happen. I guarantee you, bet your entire life savings on this. I can't do it, man. I can't tell you to do that. So I'm sorry. I apologize to everyone for not wanting you to lose your life savings. So
when we have our hot takes, they are real and they are spectacular.
Yes, they are. And I would reference Happy Gilmore here, but as we all know, we can't do that yet because Chris has never watched the movie. So there's a hot take.
Follow that.
That
flow.
is a hot take right there. Not gonna lie. You want the hot take? There it is. Anyways, Arkansas by 6. There you go.
All right. Order of certainty on these. Maybe not. Certainty is the wrong words. Order of confidence.
Now this is why we had to redo this, because before I said, it may be Kentucky, but not Kentucky anymore. I don't think. Yeah, because we just don't know, and there's no. I think it's got to be Arkansas. Like I feel interesting saying that because we talked about how well Missouri's played at
Because it's
home, but
something that hasn't happened in 3 months.
well, but it's like who else you picking here?
I
Are you
know.
that
This
confident?
look. This
Ole
is
Miss gonna be-
not. This is not a night where I feel great about knowing what is going to happen in any of these games. And maybe this is just a total stay away night.
Well, yeah, because what's your confidence level in Ole Miss, South Carolina? Not a lot. Florida A&M, as I said, I think it's similar to Ole Miss, South Carolina. I have no idea how that game plays out because you don't know if Tyree Appley's going to play. That factors in. You don't know if Ty Washington's going to play, so you don't know what to really go into. And look, you if you're watching this, you may have clarity on this by the time you watch this. But right now, as we're recording, we have no clarity. Not the first time we've ever said that. Not the first time that's happened. But we have no clarity on any of this stuff. So Arkansas is probably number one for me. I think Arkansas wins that game. So that's my top of the confidence. After that, flip a coin on the other three, not knowing the circumstances of Kentucky, Tennessee, or Florida A&M. So
tell folks about our partnerships. Partnership.
If you have all of that confidence that we just gave you to spend all your money on betting, you can do that at Action 24/7. Which if you look in the description below, click on that link. South 14 is the code. And your first deposit, they'll match up to $800. So you can use that if you want to bet on any of these games. But as Chris advised, I would maybe stay away from this slate. I don't love any of these right now. So,
all right, if you're watching, help us out. Subscribe. That really helps us a ton. We are getting unbelievable watch hours. We need to catch up on our subscribers. That helps us. So hit that button. Tell a friend. And if you like baseball, we got a lot of baseball stuff around the corner. Lots more basketball stuff this week. We are really ramping it up. I think we'll have more content here on our YouTube channel this week than we've had maybe in the history of our channel this week, and it's only going to continue to escalate. All right, he's Blake Lovell. I'm Chris Lee. Thanks for watching. We will see you on Tuesday.